Let's start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Welcome to the live lesson. Didn't mean to hit the button just yet, but obviously it's meant to be. Name of this one is various topics dated January 10th, 2024, the hopeful year of Jacob's trouble. And pretty much it's just a various topics. And Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. Just got a couple of things I want to speak about and see how. I got a couple of precepts and a couple of tabs, stuff I wanted to share with brothers and a few sisters out there. And pretty much, I was listening to Apostle R's video yesterday, and I was listening to the one, with the big waterhead, professional eater Christian, that Pastor was getting on. And this clown, he had nerve enough to say that wasn't some of the disciples of the Lord Greeks. The shit that come out of these people's mouths, man. Crazy. So I thought about this one precept here, so I want to address that, which that's pretty much easy, very easy. The deal, all you got to do is go through the different, scriptures. But this one in particular came to mind, Acts, the 2nd chapter, Acts 2 and 5. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. These are all Israelites coming from different places, in Europe, Asia, so on and so forth, to the Passover, because this is around the time of the Passover. Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because every man heard them speak in his own language. Because when the apostles started speaking in tongues, meaning they were speaking different languages. And it's very easy to see that in the scriptures. You could easily cut those demons in the churches that talking about they speaking in tongues. Speaking in tongues just simply means speaking in another language. Not that madness. So these individuals, these Israelites that came to Jerusalem to keep the Passover, they heard the disciples speaking, the words of the gospel in the language of these different Israelites that were coming from different walks of life that spoke different languages. And this is what they reasoned and asked among themselves. It says, and they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? Now the Galileans are what? Those are Israelites. So how in the hell did he get the word Greeks? But that's that soup that he was eating. That soup of confusion. Now even in the Greek it says Galileos, a native of Galilee. Now where is Galilee located? It's located on the north. It's located north of Jerusalem, north of Judea. It's right around, I believe it's right above the Sea of Galilee. You have the Sea of Galilee, but you have the Jordan River that runs down, and at the bottom of that you have the Dead Sea. So up above that you have the Sea of Galilee, and in that area you have Nazareth, you have Galilee, and all the different Capernaum. I believe Chorazin is up that way, if I'm not mistaken. So how can they be Greeks when the scriptures identify them as being Galileans? All right, and that comes up many times. And then I was listening to the Bible this morning, and even in the book of Mark 14 and 70, it says, and he denied it again, which is dealing with the Apostle Peter. And a little after, they that stood by said again to Peter, surely thou art one of them, for thou art a Galilean, and thy speech agreeth thereto. So pretty much that's an easy one to debunk. I think he just pulled that one out of his ass because of that soup that he was eating. But nevertheless, I just wanted to say that on that, bring out that precept on it. And that was it on that. Now, I had mentioned in another lesson, dealing with the strangers, how that the account that I was reading in First Maccabees, the first chapter, was dealing with when Antiochus Epiphanes lost the war, and then he took it out on the Israelites, and that actually happened, but that particular story in that chapter in First Maccabees, the first chapter, was not that particular battle. What happened was he had went down to Egypt, and as he was on his way there, eventually, he beat Ptolemy at one time, and eventually, what happened was that that Ptolemy made an alliance with the Roman Empire, and when Antiochus Epiphanes was going back down there to invade it, he met with the general, Gaius Papilius Leanus, or Linus, however you record Linus Dominus, which however you say it, Leanus or Linus. And what happened was, this is where you get the famous quote, draw the line in the sand. And according to a couple of historians at the time, they said that the general, asked Antiochus Epiphanes not to do what he was about to do. And he said that, okay, well, let me think about it. I'm going to go back and have counsel, and I'll give you an answer then. So he began to draw a circle around Antiochus Epiphanes. And that's where you get the famous quote, draw the line in the sand. And he said, okay, he said, before you walk out of this circle or something along those lines, I need your answer. So he was forced to give an answer. And once he gave the answer, he was so pissed off, that when he left there, he went to Jerusalem, and he took his frustration out on Jake back then. Now, this is which lines up too, because when you go to line in the sand in Wikipedia, it says in 168 BC, a Roman consul named Gaius Papilius Leanus or Linus drew a circular line in the sand around King Antiochus IV of the Seleucid Empire. Then said, before you cross this circle, I want you to give me a reply for the Roman Senate, implying that Rome would declare war if the king stepped out of the circle without, and the rest, without, giving him, the answer. So I just wanted to, bring that out because I mentioned it, in the lesson, The Strangers, and I was wrong as far as the chapter I was trying to quote it from, but I was correct in the actual history of it, because that actually happened. And this happened in 168 BC. And in 168 BC lines up with the desecration of the temple that Antiochus Epiphanes, destroyed, and brought in, an image to Jupiter. He also brought in harlots, and he also desecrated the altar by sacrificing swine on it. And there's a whole history behind this. Now, one scripture that came to mind was the book of Daniel 11 and 29. It says, at the time appointed, he shall return, dealing with Antiochus Epiphanes, and come toward the south, because he was going to wage war in Egypt against Ptolemy. I'm not sure if that was Ptolemy the third or Ptolemy the fourth. I would have to go back to see. But you brothers could fact check that for yourself. But it shall not be as the former, right? Because remember, we read in First Maccabees, when you go there, that he actually won the war against Ptolemy the first time. But the second time when he went down there, he was not able to make it, because he was met by Gaius Papilius Linus or Leanus, and that's where he drew the line in the circle, the line in the sand, and he couldn't come out of that circle until he gave him an answer. It says, or as the latter. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him, right? Because the ships of Kittim, you had Rome that was in control of that whole region, because they were coming in as a power, and as they were coming in as a power, the other nations that were around, including the Greeks, were losing ground around the Mediterranean Sea, because it was time for the Romans to, come up, and it was time for the Greeks to go down, pursuant to prophecy, right? It says, therefore he shall be grieved, meaning Antiochus Epiphanes was grieved. Why? And return and have indignation against the holy covenant, and so shall he do. And that's what happened, because the general confronted him and stopped him from his mission. So what he did was, he was so angry, he took it out on our forefathers back then. It says, he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant, because you even had some that helped him. You also read about that in the book of Maccabees, in different places in Maccabees, where you had wicked men of Israel helping this devil, take down their own people. You had demons that actually paid to have the priesthood, the high priesthood, and many other things that they were doing, just to appease this devil. All right, so pretty much that was pretty much it. Matter of fact, I read the 31st verse. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. And that's what happened. And this is why today we celebrate what's known as Hanukkah, or the Feast of Lights, the Feast of Dedication, or the Feast of Winter. And shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate, because they also are the abomination of desolation, because they're Edomites. But when you read in Daniel, the 9th chapter, when it speaks about the abomination of desolation, when you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that's also dealing with, that particular one is dealing with the Roman Empire, when the Roman Empire came in during 70 AD and desecrated the temple. So the New Testament, when it speaks about the abomination of desolation, goes hand in hand with Daniel, the 9th chapter, which is dealing with the Romans. That has nothing to do with the Greeks. All right, even though it also applies it to them, because they were also Edomites. All right, so that was it again. That was it on that. That was the main thing I wanted to bring out. Now, the next order of business. Next order of business is, I had mentioned in another lesson, because I've done lessons on this, but not really many, just one. I had mentioned, because you have this thing of the fallen ones, the fallen angels, and so on and so forth, and then you have something called the Anunnaki, the planet Nibiru, or Nibiru, or however you say that. And I had mentioned that the individual that so-called translated the Sumerian tablets didn't know a lick of Sumerian, and he mistranslated the inscription on those tablets, to where he came up with his own bullshit, and that's where he got that whole Anunnaki thing, which the word Anunnaki, I believe, breaks down to offspring of the heavens or something along those lines, which that was incorrect on his part, because he didn't speak Sumerian. Later on, as information became more and more available to the deciphering of that language, they came to find out that he was off on that. Okay, his name was Zachariah Sitchin, Sitchin, and pretty much I put that in the description box, this particular article that I'm going to read from. All right, so Anunnaki, when you go to Wikipedia, it says the Anunnaki Sumerian, also transcribed blah 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 blah. It says are a group of deities of the ancient Sumerian Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. In the early Sumerian writings about them, which come from post-Akkadian period, the Anunnaki are the deities in the pantheon. And if you notice, every nation has their own god, so the so-called gods every nation has like a pantheon, because the nations, the God of the nations or the gods of the nations are nothing but idols. And pretty much the real God of the nations is money. And they all have similar stories, just with different names. You have Enlil, Enki, you have Nana, Il Nana, and all that bullshit. You have Zeus, Apollo, Hades, and all of these nations have the same thing, the same story, just in different, with different names, pretty much. Let's get this one precept right quick. I believe that's Psalms 82, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, no, it's not it. That's not it. It's Psalms 96, is it? Psalms 96 and 5. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens, and they all have similar stories. All right. Now, let's jump down. Okay, etymology. The name Anunnaki is derived from An, the Sumerian god of the sky. The name is variously written Anuna, blah, 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 meaning princely offspring or offspring of An. The Anunnaki were believed to be offspring of An and his consort, and the earth goddess Ki. Identifies Sumerian mother goddess, stating that they were originally the same figure. The oldest Anunnaki was Enlil, the god and chief of the Sumerian pantheon. So when you read through this, it reads as Greek mythology, Roman mythology, so on and so forth. All right. So pretty much what they're saying is that these entities are like half God, half human. What's the word that they have when they speak about somebody that's half God and half human? There's a term they have. I can't think of it right now at the moment. Lord's will, it'll come back. You jump down to worship and iconography. The Anunnaki are chiefly mentioned in literary texts, and very little evidence to support the existence of any cult of them has yet been unearthed. Demigod, not femigod, demigod. But you were close to water, brother. Demigod. Yep, they were demigods, meaning they were half man, half God. And even in this is going to kind of show you that. All right. So as you read down, it says deities in ancient Mesopotamia were almost exclusively anthropomorphic, right? Now, anthropomorphic, right, is the attribution of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non-human entities. It is considered to be an innate tendency of human psychology. So the rise from the verb self, deliver from Greek anthropos, which is human or man, and morph, to change, to form. So in other words, they're saying that this is like half human, half God. It's the gods that were transformed on the earth as human. That's what they're trying to say. That's what they're trying to say about the sons of God, which we're gonna get that. So let me get that real quick, just so I can just have that on deck when we're ready for it. I have another scripture here that we were going to, which backs up the whole. Let me just get them, so we could just have them on deck so we can move along. Okay, we can move along here. All right, so going back, it says, this is the next part of it, right? I read that again. Deities in ancient Mesopotamia were almost exclusively anthropomorphic, which means to change into human form. It said they were thought to possess extraordinary powers and were often envisioned as being tremendous physical size. Keep that in mind, tremendous physical size. This is why when you go to Genesis, it speaks about giants. All right, which the word there should have not been translated as giants. I don't know if any of the other translations for this word giants, if it actually uses another word for it. But we'll investigate that as we move along. So they were thought to possess extraordinary powers and were often envisioned as being tremendous physical size. The deities typically were melem, an ambiguous substance, or they wore melem, an ambiguous substance which covered them in terrifying splendor. Right, it says melem could also be worn by heroes, kings, giants, and even demons. All right, so you could read more. This particular account is in Wikipedia. If you type in Anunnaki in Wikipedia, Anunnaki, you'll be able to read some more of that, if you're interested. But now the main article is on a site called Ancient Origins: Reconstructing the Story of Humanity's Past, and the whole focus here is this is written updated on January 15, 2018, a few years back. So it says Zecharia Sitchin and the mistranslation of Sumerian texts, and that's why to this very day they're still pushing, that the Anunnaki or Planet Nibiru and all this stuff are fallen angels, and they're still trying to push that same narrative. But this devil here, this Edomite, this devil, this possibly looked like an Amalekite, this devil did not speak a lick of Sumerian. He didn't know Sumerian. He didn't know how to read Sumerian. He mistranslated something, and it's been used, all these years later to still push that bullshit. And people still eating that shit up like candy. Matter of fact, let me get one precept on that. 1 Timothy 6:20, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, which that's what this is. It's profane and vain babblings, because they're trying to take something that's non-scriptural and trying to add it to the scriptures, and the average person that has no clue of what the scriptures say, they'll eat it up like candy. It says, and oppositions of science falsely so called. So opposition means what? Something that goes against. And you know that this devil, anything that stands for righteousness, they're always against it. Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called the Most High. Now the word for opposition is the word antithesis, which is against thesis, pretty much against what's written. Opposition, that which is opposed. And that's all it says. It doesn't really say much. And it's only used in that one verse. So antithesis. So basically it's anything that goes against something. Let's see. The invention of false knowledge, either mutually oppugnant or opposed to true Christian doctrine. And that's exactly what it is, because it says oppositions of science, falsely so called. Now science goes back to the word wisdom. All right. And they got the word gnosos, which is knowledge or to know. It says knowledge signifies in general intelligence, understanding. And this is why when we go to the book of Proverbs, right, which this is the formula. The Bible is a formula, the instructions. And not everybody is able to follow the instructions. Remember, it says the wicked shall not understand. Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding, because wisdom and knowledge without understanding is pretty much wasted. Because if you have knowledge and wisdom, that's beautiful. But if you don't have the understanding, then you're not going to have the perfect combination to be able to be a great teacher, because you're going to be lost in the sauce, as they say. So let me see. Let's go back. Read that one more time, and then we'll go back to the article. Oh yeah, and the word falsely so-called is where you get the word pseudonymous. Pseudonymous, where you get the word pseudo. Pseudo means false. All right, pseudo, right, means a liar or false, and then you have the word onoma, which means name. All right, name. So pseudonymous means false name. And what is that? That's the false breakdown, or the other gospel that the Apostle Paul spoke of, that if anybody comes with that, we're to reject them. Let's see. Let's get that real quick, and then we can move on. Galatians chapter 1 and 6. It says, I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Yahushua unto another gospel. And the word another gospel, the word should be, let's see, other, it should be hetero. Like heterosexual is other sex. Heteroglossos is other tongue. Let's see, another should be, heteros, which, or heteros, right, which is the other, another, all right, to number as opposed to some form of person or thing. So hetero is hetero euangelion, EU, that means good. Angelion is where you get the word angel or message or messenger from. So anything that opposes or goes against the true gospel. All right. So the Apostle Paul said, let them be accursed, which is not another, right? Because they're using the same Bible, but then they're breaking it down different. And that's why the scripture said there's no private interpretations. It says, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Yahushua. And that's what this devil did. And they're the ultimate perverters of the gospel. So going to the article, right, it says the Anunnaki, central to Sitchin's narrative, are a group of alien beings known as the Anunnaki, whom he claimed crossed their own DNA with that of Homo erectus in order to create mankind. Now, right then and there, that right there, we can just close the article, close the book. You don't have to go into it no more. Inside joke. We could close the book right there, because if we understand scriptures, all we have to do to kill that right there, that whole argument, is go to 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, and go down to the 39th verse, and that kills it. 1 Corinthians 15 and 39, it says, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. And that right there kills the theory of evolution. That's that one precept. And then you could back it up with 1 Timothy 6 and 20, which we just read. Science falsely so-called. All right? Pseudo-onoma, which is pretty much pseudo-name or pseudo-science. All right? Then as we read on, because they're trying to say that there was a combination of God and man. That's where you get the word demigod. Matter of fact, let's look up the word demigod real quick. Let's look up the word demigod. Just to give you demigod definition. Let's go, Joe. Demigod, a being with partial or lesser divine status, such as a minor deity, the offspring of a god and a mortal, or a mortal raised to divine rank. So an offspring of God and a mortal. First of all, the angels do not have sex. That's first and foremost. This is why Yahushua cut them wicked Sadducees that didn't believe in the resurrection, didn't believe in angels. You know, he said, "You err not knowing the scriptures, for in the resurrection they neither marry neither married nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of the Most High." The angels don't have sex. The angels do not eat. The angels do not have to be, oh, wait a minute, Lord, before I go on this mission, I got to hit the royal throne, because I got to take a dump. They don't have, angelic toilet tissue, angelic gold toilets in the heavens, because they don't have to eat. They're not like us on the earth as far as, the needs of the flesh, So when we go back to 1 Corinthians 15 and 40, there are also celestial bodies. What are celestial bodies? That's bodies in the heavens, heavenly bodies. And it said, and bodies terrestrial, which you have bodies on the earth. Terrestrial means terra, tierra, or earth, right? So you have heavenly bodies, you have terrestrial bodies. Heavenly bodies, earthly bodies. And they too are two separate things. It says, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another, right? So you have two types of bodies. Bodies that are created to live in the heavens, and bodies that are created to live on the earth. When we go to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, right? And 1, for we know if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of the Most High, and house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. So we have two type of bodies, because our spirits are created to be in a body, whether on earth or whether in heaven. All right? It's two separate makeups. They look similar because the Lord created us in his image, but they have different functions. The heavenly bodies do not have any flaws. The earthly bodies have flaws. All right? So like it for 1 minute. Trying to get all that nastiness out. So, going back to this article, that killed it right there, because it's saying that the Anunnaki, according to that devil Sitchin, claimed they crossed their own DNA with that of Homo erectus, meaning the so-called gods crossed their, in order to create mankind, which is total bullshit. It says, for the purpose of using humans as slaves to mine gold and other minerals. Today, these Anunnaki are often variously portrayed in AAT literature as the scientific equivalent of the creator of the human race, as portrayed in numerous religions. Anunnaki actually means princely seed or princely royal blood. Sitchin's translation of Anunnaki as those who from heaven came is itself an error or was completely fabricated. And remember, science falsely so called. You also have Job. These devils can't tell the truth to save their life, man. Job chapter 13. Because you got to come up with a gimmick. If you want to get paid, you got to come up with a gimmick, and you got to come up with something new, something that the people never heard before. Job 13 and 4, but you are forgers of lies. We could just stop it right there. Forgers of lies mean they create lies. Right? So going back, it says it was completely fabricated. All modern translations of the term in this fashion are merely relying on Sitchin's own publications. So he was flawed, he was off. So anyone that quotes this devil's work, they're off, because they're just continuing the same madness. Scholars are free to search the entire spectrum of Sumerian literature at the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature to test any of the terms referenced by Sitchin or the present article for themselves, right? And this goes into individual scholars that actually have expertise in the Sumerian language. And if they did the research, they'll find out that this guy was flawed. So when he gave that breakdown of the interpretation of the Anunnaki as being the offspring of heaven, he was totally off. He was off. In the wake of the popular reception of Sitchin's books, a plethora of popular media have followed his lead in claiming that the Sumerian literature portrays the Anunnaki as a group of alien beings who descended to the earth in flying vehicles, in spacesuits, or other paraphernalia. There is no such depiction of the Anunnaki in the Sumerian text. Do you hear that? There is no such depiction of the Anunnaki in the Sumerian texts. Now, to go back as far as the so-called aliens and vehicles, the angels are alien to the earth because they are foreign or strange to the earth, but they are not some big head, big eye, grays as they call them and all that. But they are entities in the heavens that look, that look like humans, because the Most High, Yahweh Shai, the angels, they all look like humans. But then you also have those angels that have different forms, different looks. You have the demons that have different looks, different forms, But what this guy is saying is totally off. So there is no such depiction of the Anunnaki in the Sumerian text. In fact, the closest match to these portrayals is a description of Anuna, the gods, deities, whom An or Anu conceived in the sky. The Anunnaki are never depicted as alien space gods in Sumerian art and iconography. So this guy just made this whole shit up. And people just follow that shit. Tell you, Jake, you don't take much. All you gotta do is give them a good story and they'll follow right along. And those symbols which Sitchin's legacy has led many to believe represent them actually refer to other deities. For instance, the winged disc and crescents, which proliferate so much Sumerian iconography, actually represent specific solar and lunar deities, not the Anunnaki. You get it? And then they give you a picture and they show you, these different deities. It has nothing to do with man on the earth. I said ancient gold diggers. Regarding the subject of ancient divinities mining gold, okay, because that's what he was saying. See this bugged out shit? You had the Anunnaki, they created man, they spliced the DNA, and then they were doing that so that they could make humans slaves to mining gold, right? It says regarding the subject of ancient divinities mining gold, it may surprise many readers to learn that Sitchin himself never provided a textual reference from the Sumerian corpus to support this theory, which has gained incredible popularity. A search of the instance of gold as found in the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature fails to find any reference to ancient gods mining gold. In the 12th planet, Sitchin claims that Bel Nimiki, an exaltation of Ea, should be translated Lord of Mining. However, there is no justification for this translation, and neither do any of the portrayals of Ea in the Sumerian text associate him with lordship over ancient gold mines. In reality, Ea is routinely associated with wisdom or knowledge, providing further grounds for the common translation of Bel Nimiki as meaning Lord of Wisdom. That's it. Then they give you another picture. It says the Sumerian corpus nowhere states that the creation of Adama, which is Adam, or mankind was done so that humanity could serve as a slave species to mine gold. And it certainly does not depict an Anunnaki scientist crossing alien DNA with primates. Now, what does that remind you of? Anunnaki scientists crossing alien DNA with primates. That reminds you of Yakub, the big head scientist. Said that he created Esau. I forget how the whole story, but it's so bugged out that it don't matter. So it says Sumerian literature plainly tells the story of humanity being created by the gods to assist in the process of creation itself. To assist in the process of creation itself. As humans multiplied and grew too noisome, the gods became annoyed and sent a great deluge, which is a flood, to wipe them out. The cuneiform has it that one man was instructed to build a boat, and he and his family and select animals were saved from the 7 days and 7 nights of rain which caused the flood. You see, so every nation has a creation story. To say that the Bible is saying that the flood happened, but all these other nations were saying it before that. Yeah, you know why they were saying it before that? Because when that happened, the person that survived, which was Noah and his 3 sons and their 4 wives, they all knew about the flood story, and they were telling the flood story. So everybody at that time knew about it. And the Bible wasn't written till probably, let's see, roughly about maybe 1,000 years later, somewhere around there. I would have to go back and do the math, but let's say about 1,000 years later. So because an event happened and it was written about later and somebody wrote before it, that doesn't make the person that wrote it before the actual author of that. This is something that was common among the people. Just like when the Lord delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt, all of those nations back there heard about that. They talked about it. That doesn't make them the authors of it. They just witnessed or heard what was going on, and they reported. Some people wrote it down, but that doesn't make them the authors of it. Now it says Nibiru, which they say that that's another planet. According to Sitchin, the purpose of obtaining gold from Earth was to save the planet Nibiru. And that sounds like these crazy movies that we came to this planet because our planet is dying and we needed the resources and, just that bugged out sci-fi shit. It says, which travels throughout solar system over 3,600 years. Dr. Michael S. Hesser, and how the fuck Esau know that? Or if you travel 36,000 years, you'll find Nibiru. Anti-Semitic, whatever, has written a paper on the subject of Nibiru as it actually appears in cuneiform text, which illuminates the actual ancient context and usage of this term, considerably drawn on the work of several experts, including the esteemed Sumerian scholar Beno Landsberger, and also utilizing the Chicago Assyrian Dictionary. Hesser analyzed all of the known cuneiform texts that mention Nibiru. He found that the term is only used in astronomical or deitic context. In other words, nothing to do with humans. To refer to 4 subjects: the planet Jupiter, the planet Mercury, the god Marduk, and a star. You hear me? You hear that? That Nibiru in the Sumerian text writings, and this is by experts in their language, it depicts it 4 times, the word Nibiru. 1 to the planet Juniper, planet Jupiter, then also the planet Mercury, the god Marduk, and a star. That's the only 4 times it depicts or speaks about Nibiru. Nothing to do with a planet. This devil, they slip, I'm telling you. While acknowledging that this fourfold application of the word does cause some confusion among scholars, Hesser points out one thing is certain from the text. Nibiru is never identified as a planet beyond Pluto. And that's pretty much it. Then it gives you the Nibiru is called a star. It's called a planet. The Sumerians, by their own records, knew of only 5 planets. Nibiru is never mentioned in any respect with the Anunnaki. It is never said to have been or be inhabited. Nibiru is both a fixed star in some relationship to constellation, whether a member or just in proximity is unknown, that holds them in their courses, but is also described as changing positions and crossing the sky at times. Nibiru was seen every year, which demolishes Sitchin's view of a 36,000 year cycle of it. Sitchin's claim that the Sumerian had extensive knowledge of the solar system is incompatible with the system of cosmoastronomy recorded by the Sumerians themselves. While the texts do associate particular planets with certain deities, The cuneiform never actually mentioned more than 7 planetary bodies, counting the sun and moon. For example, the 2 Mulapin tablets date the rising of 36 fixed stars, as well as the planet of paths of Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, Mercury, and the sun and the moon. All right, so it's totally bugged out. And it goes on and on and on, with different, and I mean, there's a little bit more left. They got a little bit more explanation, and then they have one more part called Consequences and the Search for Truth. And I didn't really read that part, so maybe I'll read it another time. But let's get to this real quick. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those. Matter of fact, let's start at the first verse. Genesis 6 and 1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. This is dealing with men. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. So when they see sons of God, automatically they're thinking about deities, half man, half human, or gods coming down having sex with women. No, we just read that all flesh is not the same flesh. You have heavenly bodies, you have earthly bodies, and they differ from each other. All right. Then let me see. That the sons of the Most High saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and took them. Oh, and when you're reading this, you have to keep in mind that the previous chapter, Genesis the 5th chapter, speaks about the sons of God through the line of Seth. Right? All of those. When you read the 4th chapter gives you Cain, which was the head of the sons of the wicked, and all of his descendants are all sons of the wicked. Then after it gives you a depiction of the sons of the wicked, then it jumps to the next chapter, which gives you the sons of God. Back then they were known as the sons of God. Today they're known as the Israelites. Yasha Allah, he is a prince with God, or he is a prince of the power. So back then, you had the sons of the wicked, Genesis 4. You had the sons of God, which is Genesis 5. Then it goes on to the next chapter, chapter 6, saying that these men that were known as the sons of God, they saw the daughters of these other nations, and they started mingling with them. That's all it means. And from that point, they fell. Why? Because the Lord said, don't make any marriages with them, dealing with the Canaanites, because what's going to happen is they're going to turn your heart from the Lord. So you're going to fall from that great estate that you were at, because you're going to worship something that is lesser than the Most High. You see? So you're going to go and you're going to give up your kingly status for something that is worthless. And that's how Jake fell back then, before they were being called Jake. So as we read the next verse, in verse 3, and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. The point is here in the 4th verse. There were giants in the earth in those days. This scripture here, see, understanding what we know now about the sons of the Most High, which are actual men, we understand giants as not as being super tall, 30, 40 feet tall, which is what they depict these angels as, so-called half man, half God. But we understand the term giant today as far as someone that's very famous, that has a name. They're people praise and laud them. And that's, and then once a scandal comes out and that person's name is tainted, then they go and they fall from that great status, or from that, giant status that they had. Now their name is mud. Perfect example, O.J. Simpson, the darling of America. He went from being the darling of America to being trash. Bill Cosby, another one. He went from being the darling of America to being trash. So on and so forth. The list goes on. That's pretty much what happened back then. All right. So this word giants should have not been translated as giants in the English because it's implying somebody that's tall. It should have been someone that fell from that great name that they had and became lesser than what they were. So Genesis 6 and 4, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of the Most High came in unto the daughters of men, here goes all the gods and the women on the earth got together, had sex, and they had children. So you had demigods now, half man, half God. No, it's bullshit. And they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Right? Why were they men of renown? Because they were actually sons of God. You know that the lineage of Seth and the rest of those men had with these women, but they were still sons of God. They were not mixed. So now, when we deal, before we go to the word giants, let me see. See, the NLT says in those days, and for some time after, giant Nephites. Yeah. Yeah. Some translations just use the word Nephilim, and the word Nephilim goes to the Hebrew Nephiliim, and we're gonna actually cover that. So the word Nephilim, right, which is what the word giants translates to, right? Let's go to the interlinear. Right, the word there is Napayal or Ha-Nepalium. So Napayal, right, in the Hebrew for the word giants, it says giants, the Nephilim. It doesn't really break down what it means. Let's see the word Nepal, right? When you go back to the root word Nepal, which is the primitive root, is to fall, lie, be cast down. And that's what happened. They were cast down from that great status that they had. They were not kicked out of heaven. That's all bullshit. All right. They fell from that great state. And why? Because they sinned against the Lord. You know, because they weren't supposed to mingle with those women back then at the time. All right. Now, when we go from there to explain that a little more, we go to Psalms chapter 82 and verse 6. This is something that Yahweh Shai quoted when they accused him of making himself equal with the Most High and calling himself a God. He quoted this scripture in Psalms 82 and 6. I have said you are gods, right? Because the word gods or Allah or Allahayim, you know, it could be the angels. It could be mighty ones. When you go to that word, it doesn't always necessarily mean just an angel or a celestial being. The word gods, Allahayim, right, is plural form of saying God or gods. It says rulers, judges, divine ones, angels, gods. So it depends on what you applying it to. In the case of, in the case of the sons of God in Genesis the 6th chapter, it would be rulers or judges. All right. Let's see. Godlike one. See, a godlike one is a man on the earth, an Israelite man on the earth that is devoted to the Most High, that does the things of the Most High. That's what it means by God, godlike one or the sons of God. All right. So going back, right. Let me read that again. I have said ye are gods, and all of you are the children of the Most High. All right. And we are the children of the Most High, the Israelites. But here's the point. But you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. So now, when we look up the word, fall doesn't mean to fall like one of the princes, meaning to fall from that state, from that rulership state, that kingly state, right? When we look up this word fall, it goes back to the Hebrew word Nepal. So really, when we go to Genesis, the 6th chapter, what it should have says, there were fallen ones in the earth. But they would have took that and spun it around. See, they got kicked out of heaven. No, they fell from that great estate that they had. And the word Nepal, once again, is to fall, lie down, be cast down. So they fell from that great status that they had. That's all it means. But these fabrications, these fables, these stories that have been told, which are nothing but lies that have been forged by Esau, they have been used to trick people and to teaching another Yahushai, or teaching another gospel. And what did the Apostle Paul say? Let them be accursed. So here it says, let's go to 1 Timothy 4:7, but refuse profane and old wives' fables, and exercise thyself rather unto godliness. Right, because if you take the time to search the scriptures, and to go through just basic search, nothing even extensive, you'll be able to find this out about the Anunnaki, the planet, so-called planet Nibiru, which we just read that Nibiru was never so it was associated with what was it? Mercury, Mars, Marduk, and the sun. It was never associated with another planet anywhere else. So the word there for, first let's go to profane. The word profane is bebelos, which means accessible, lawful to be trodden, of place, profane, unhallowed, common. All right, ungodly. So that profane, which when you break the word down, profane means outside of the temple. And old wives, you got the word wives, old wives, which is graudes, old womanish, right? And these are like womanish, traits, telling these, fantastical stories. And then you have the word fables, which the word fables goes to the word muthos, which goes to the word myth. All right, and mutho, a speech word saying, a narrative story, a true narrative, because you can have a true narrative, a fiction, a fable. Now, a fiction is something, a story that's told that is not true. It's nothing but a fable. An invention, a falsehood. All right, let me just check something real quick. Right, and it goes back to the root word nuo, which means instruct. And pretty much what it is as the scriptures describe it, as cunningly devised fables. Matter of fact, let's go to that one. You also have Jewish fables. This is 2 Peter 1:16. For we have not followed cunningly devised fables when we made known unto you the power and coming of our Lord Yahushai, but were eyewitnesses of his majesty. And this is the Apostle Peter. See, the Apostle Peter started to learn about all of those different Greek mythologies and stuff, because he was one of the ones, the main one at first, to deal with the Israelite foreigners. Then the Lord gave the job to the Apostle Paul because he was better equipped, because he understood the language. He understood, the customs. He understood, the games and different things he could use to use that along with the scriptures to help to convert those Israelite foreigners from among the Greeks. Right? And when we go to the word cunningly devised fables, we have the word sophizo, which you have a sophist. All right, sophizo, which goes back to the Greek word sophos. Sophos means wisdom. Like you have the word sophomore. Sophos is wisdom. More or moron is when you get the word moron. So a sophomore is a wise fool. All right, a wise fool. So sophizo, right? It says to make wise, teach, to become wise, to have understanding, to invent, play the sophist, to devise cleverly or cunningly. So they'll use scriptures and they'll put stuff together and they'll set it up in a way to where it's convincing to the average person, and they're going to eat it up. This is why Yahweh said, if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect. Now, when you look up the word sophist, it says a paid teacher of philosophy and rhetoric in ancient Greece, associated with popular thought, with moral skepticism and specious reasoning, because the reasoning is false, is is faltered. What is being a sophist? A sophist is someone who makes good points about an issue until you realize these points aren't entirely true. All right, and pretty much what happens that his argument is picked apart, just like Zechariah Sitchin's argument about the Anunnaki is picked apart by those that understand the actual Sumerian language and can go back to the text to verify if what he was saying was true or not. And they found out that it's false. And the average person out there, because they've just been so used to repeating the same falsehoods, they just keep following the same narrative. All right. The Sophists were the first formal teachers of art, of speaking and writing in the Western world. Their influence on education in general, blah, 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 blah. So it's, a sophist pretty much is someone that has a very good argument. They can put it together well, but when you start to question their so-called narrative, you pick it apart because it's nothing but fluff. It looks good, it sounds good, but it has no substance behind it. All right. So pretty much that's what I wanted to cover on this. So when you read back in Genesis 64, there were giants in the earth in those days, meaning they were fallen ones. They fell from that great state. All right, that's pretty much what it means. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. The water for joining me in this morning's edification. And Barakatah Yahweh Bashem Yahushua for the inspiration to do this lesson. Like I said, I didn't mean to hit the button to go live just yet, but the Spirit wanted this thing to go. So, there it is. So Barakatah Yahweh Bashem Yahushua for that. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say Shalom.